Welcome back to another Meet the Masters. My name is Alexander Dragonic and I'm here with Alexi Christidis from Chalari Wines from Swan Valley. Super excited to have you on board.
Thank you, thanks Pete.
We have to admit for the second time, but the first time you're never going to see it.
No, that's right. Tech problem.
For people that are watching this, probably don't know anything about Mourvedre or Mataro or Monastrell. It's the same name of the grape, just three different names. How would you say, like, typically, what would you look for in a Mourvedre?
So as far as the fruit goes, we're looking for those nice thick skins, well-formed fruit. Flavor profile, because we use a lot of the stalks in the whole bunches, we don't want green stalks, so we need ripeness in the stalks, but we don't want the fruit to become overripe. So we're looking for like those nice blue and red fruits in the fruit, more the red fruit for the lighter style. But depending on how the season is, you might be getting more of that blue and dark fruit, depending on how long it hangs for. I really like the variety, and I think I've mentioned, one of the varietal characteristics of Mourvedre that I really find interesting is that crushed ant. And we spoke about it, and that formic acid.
How did you formic acid?
Formic acid. So to me, it's really, it doesn't, it's not the most dominant aroma on the nose, but it certainly stands out for me, and not everyone, but it's particularly interesting for me varietally.
Okay. So don't go out and find the ants and crush them.
Yeah, only if you accidentally crush
Only accidentally. yes, exactly. Yeah. And when you mentioned like different types of approaches, you said three different approaches to this wine.
Yeah.
Can you give us a little bit of an explanation, like totally simple, easy explanation for people to understand how you get this flavor profile?
I'll try to keep it simple, but it is a process. One of the processes is called carbonic maceration, and technically it can be complicated. Basically, it's when you ferment the berry intact inside the skin, and so when there's no oxygen, the pathway to create alcohol is different. It's anaerobic, so there's no oxygen, and what they'll do, it'll create flavors of like lifted fruit, so lifted raspberries or candied raspberries, or we have a lolly in Australia called a red skin. So I'm not sure if you've got a red skin, but actually it's not called a red skin anymore, they've changed the name, but it's a bright sort of candied type of fruit, and if it's 100% carbonic, it can be a bit overpowering. So we use whole bunches. They go into large puncheons, which are 500 litre barrels with hatches. So there's whole berry carbonic process happening there, but it's also on stalks. So that gives some more tannin from the stalks. But when those berries hit about 2% alcohol, they split open, and then the juice comes out, and then we process it, crush it, press it.
Yeah.
To balance that out, there's also a standard open ferment, red ferment, which is oxidatively handled, plunged daily on the skins, so it doesn't have that bright red fruit. But then we combine it, and you get this lovely balance.
And how long did it take you to like get the ratios right? Like between this carbonic, open, vat ferment.
We got lucky. So essentially, the first time we made this wine, it was really dictated by the amount of fruit that we had. I think we had about 2.5 tons of this fruit, so fairly small. So we just had 2 puncheons that had the hatches on it. So literally we went, well, we'll fill those up, we crushed juice on top, and then what was left we used for the other portions. So and that just worked. So we've just we wanted to make a bit more of it this year, so we just doubled those puncheons and then doubled the other portions and kept the same ratio.
And is it an easy grape to cultivate?
It is. I suppose nothing's easy, but this is easier than, say, Pinot, for example.
Yeah, Pinot,
So it's got thicker skins, the bunches are tighter, they're closer together. So the only thing that does bother it, and depending on the season, is sometimes botrytis can get stuck inside those tight bunches. Yeah. But if it's, if the vines are aerated and kept loose and thin and there's air coming through, it's usually not too bad.
Okay. And you don't have any trouble with like over ripeness or anything like that?
Not where this is grown. This is grown in Franklin River. In saying that, this vintage there were some issues with heat, and we did lose a little bit. But generally, no. And because we're looking for an earlier pick, we're looking for acid, we're looking for bright fruit. We're picking earlier, so we don't have the issues where it's going to race away. Yeah,
you can definitely see that. I mean, it's almost like this refreshing red wine.
Yeah, and I think refreshing is a good word, and that's we make wines that are refreshing and enjoyable to drink.
Yeah.
and that's why we pick them a little bit earlier to retain that acid.
And now in Australia you have that movement or trend which is called chilled reds. Everybody's like drinking that chilled down reds, light, easy. Yeah.
Someone will correct me, but I'm pretty sure that it's the biggest growing category of wine in Australia is chilled red.
How did it become so popular?
Well, I mean, it's sort of a no-brainer in our climate, and even here it's so hot. So I mean, you know, people say put a red at cellar temp, but cellar temp in Australia in your house can be 25 degrees, you know. So, and it's just too warm for any sort of wine. So generally, people put a big red in the fridge just before you drink it. But this is more sitting at the 8 to 10 degrees is where you want these chilled reds. It just makes sense. Barbecue weather, hot day, you know, steak, whatever. Chilled red, beautiful.
And it slowly warms up.
And it slowly warms up. And this is the other thing is that I think if a wine's specifically made only to chill, sometimes you can hide, you know, faults in the wine. And that's fine, because if you chill it and you drink it and it still tastes good, then hey, everyone's happy. But we make a wine that's good at room temp and then chill it. So then you get the best of both worlds, this sort of shit there.
Exactly. And then talking about Western Australia, so you're based in Swan Valley, or am I?
Yeah, we're actually based in the Great Southern, so we live in the Great Southern.
Okay.
Sorry. Yeah.
But the winery is in Swan Valley, or?
The winery is actually in the Great Southern. So we did start in the we did start up near the Swan Valley. That's where we started our brand. And we still have relationships with growers who farm organically for us, and we still buy all their fruit from us, and that's really important. And I'll touch on that in a sec. But we moved down to the Great Southern 4 years ago, just because we needed more space, and we buy a lot of fruit from the Great Southern, and we were able to lease vineyards in the Great Southern to be able to grow our own fruit. But we still buy a fair bit of fruit from the Swan Valley and grow a fair bit of fruit in the Swan Valley, and that's because we love the fruit. Like it's an epic region. It's underrated, but it has a lot of history. It's some of the oldest vines in the country, and we have big problems with urbanisation encroaching on the Swan Valley, so we're going to lose vineyards. We also have issues with succession, so like old growers. So the pet nat we make is from Chenin Blanc and the Swan. Vermentino also from there. These guys are 78, they're pushing 80, these growers, 80 years old. Their kids don't want to take on the vineyards, so what's going to happen? Like, you know, they're too small for anyone to really be able to take on, but they're too expensive for small guys like us to be able to buy. So we've spent a lot of time, you know, working with these guys to improve the growing, so the agriculture, and then in return we pay them more for the fruit to give more incentive to keep it going.
Makes sense.
But it's going to be difficult in the years to come. I'm not sure how it's going to go.
But do these people, own their own land and they just sell the grapes, or do they also make some wine, or how does it work there?
Yeah, so these guys, so particularly, let's say Alex, his name's Alex as well. So his dad planted that vineyard 80 years ago. He also has grown raisins there, so sells raisins for fruit. But he's never made any wine out of it. He's always sold the grapes to other wineries, and that's what they do with their land. And he inherited that land, and he's had it for so long, and it's a great spot. It's a really good vineyard, but his kids aren't interested in it. So we'll see what happens. Another vineyard, Vermentino, is a bit further north. Those guys are a little bit younger, but they're still at a point where they need to make it, commercially viable, and it wasn't. And we've asked them to look at regenerative agriculture and organic farming, and they have. And in return, we pay them more for that fruit, and we're the only ones to take it. So we're trying to work out these relationships with a few growers like that, because it's important for us to see that fruit continue.
So what happens in the case of like somebody not wanting to take over the vineyard for, I don't know, the next 20 years? Does a big commercial winery come in, buys that vineyard, or does a smaller winery come in and uses that as, like you said, with the approach of regenerative, sustainable, organic, whatever?
It's hard. Potentially, if they're slightly bigger vineyards, the big guys will come in and take them. And the good thing is that in the Swan, a couple of the bigger guys are West Australian-owned family businesses, so it still stays
proper
local.
Farming.
But the small ones, I have a feeling that sometimes they can be more effort than they're worth. So it really needs to be small guys getting in there and buying. The property prices are too high, can't afford it. So that's when we start looking at cooperatives and other different ways of trying to do that. But to be honest, my gut feel is that a lot of these small vineyards will get pulled out as time goes on, which is really sad.
And then what's going to happen? What's going to be planted there?
Well, nothing. And you know, if they don't manage them, if they can't just leave the vines there because they'll just become diseased and infect vineyards close by. So they'll probably have to pull them out. And this is worst case, you know, so hopefully it doesn't happen. But, you know, these are some of the oldest vines in the country. So personally, I think our government should be looking at ways of preserving that in some way.
For sure,
Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah.
And when we talk about organic farming, how did you come upon the idea to do organic farming? Because there's a lot of, you know, winemakers, not just in Australia, but around the world, that have a decision at the beginning. You know, they gonna spray the shit out of their vineyards and, you know, make wine like that, or they're gonna do it the proper way and preserve the environment and themselves. And
Excuse me. Yeah. So look, I think, you know, we rely on like the top 15 centimetres or 30 centimetres of soil to survive as a human race. I know that sounds like an extreme point of view, but that topsoil is where all the nutrients for our plants that we grow, for our vegetables, for our crops. And to sit there and smash it with, you know, synthetic herbicides and insecticides and fungicides just to grow a crop that probably shouldn't be growing where it's been growing anyway, it's just, it doesn't make any sense to me. So, you know, the vineyard we lease down in the Great Southern, the vineyards we manage in the Swan Valley, and the Swan Valley in particular, there's no need for spraying some of these chemicals because there's a hot climate, there's plenty of wind from easterly breezes, there's not a lot of disease pressure up there. Down south there's a bit more, and I understand the sway to do that, but when you start looking at things, even from an economic point of view, like if you manage the vineyard with you know, good organic matter in the soil, things like cover crops that constantly put nutrient back into the soil, you're not having to put out nutrient. You're not spending money on just putting stuff out for the sake of it.
yeah,
You're creating this, you're regenerating the soil, and you're creating this better natural ecosystem in the vineyard, and that in turn promotes healthier plants. Like we grow Riesling and Pinot in Albany, and that's a lease that we've had only for a couple of years, but the guys who still own the property and who still work, who live there, they've put years and years and years into getting it to a point, and I've just come in on the easy end, but we still have to continue that. But this fruit, the Pinot and the Riesling, you know, the disease pressure is low, and it's because they're healthy vines. They've got plenty of nutrients. So, you know, holistically, it makes a lot of sense to grow like that. It can be harder. I mean, it is harder. It's a lot more difficult. You can't just let things go and then hope to fix it with a magic spray. Yeah. But, you know, that's just...
So what happens if you have a very bad vintage and something happens to the crops? You just take it.
It is what it is. It's farming, right? So but in saying that, so an example, last year we did get some powdery mildew on the Pinot, and it was reasonably bad, and it's because our spray unit broke for about 4 weeks. So we do spray sulfur there, which is for powdery mildew, and that's an organically allowed chemical, so it's elemental sulfur. We can do that every 14 days, and because the spray unit broke, we couldn't get a spray on for a month, I think. Okay. And then it got to a point where we had to get nets on for birds, and so we couldn't spray anymore anyway. So it was like, well, we'll let it go. And do you know what? That fruit that was covered in powdery made the yummiest Pinot. It had this savoury edge to it, and it was. I thought it looked terrible, and we thought we won't do it, but we'll just give it a go. So, and that's, you know, and that's not to say that you can do that with any wine, but we did get lucky. But
we got lucky, yeah.
But yeah, otherwise, look, it's just you try to avoid it. But if you can't, well,
you just can't. You know, there's nothing you can do.
No.
All right. Thanks, Alexi, for
pleasure.
Sitting down with us and with me and having this conversation. And thanks to the guys from Why Not for lending this great space. We love this couch and we're going to use it in the future.
Awesome. Thank you, Alex. Much appreciated.